Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team. And however that could be debated once again after another defeat, 5 defeats on the bounce. Livingston Football Club and proudly sponsored by Strana Apparel. My name's Euan and today I'm joined by Angus. Angus, you did actually manage to make the game at the weekend, but you were away, I believe. Good weekend, all in, other than the football, of course.
Yeah, was away to Rossley and the Isle of Bute, so for a wee family party, which was decent. It was like 50-50 on whether or not I was going to wake up in time to get the first ferry in the morning, which would have been 8 a.m. because of a 12 o'clock kickoff. It was just about normal time. It would have been perfect, but nah, my day started maybe 3 hours after I went to bed or something like that. So a wee ferry, 2 trains, made it back on time, and yeah, unfortunately, it didn't seem to be too much worth it, Ewan. But yeah, we'll get right into that as well, I would imagine. But yeah, what about yourself? Up to anything else? Were you successful with your Scotland tickets today? I don't know if that was on for, or is that for non-Tartan Army members?
See, I've not gone down the ballot route. I'm sitting pretty on my points
Your point.
allocation for the supporters club, so I reckon I'll be pretty quids in for tickets for Germany. So, but I am looking forward to the international break, to be brutally honest with you, because this last month's been pretty turgid watching ourselves. But as we always talk about for the last few weeks, we covered defeats as well as wins. We're not just here for the glory hunting. We're Livingston fans. You can't be a glory hunter. But as always, though, search for Talk Livi on your preferred podcast streaming site where you can follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also catch up on all our episodes that we've done today as well.
We'll start off by discussing our home defeat with Rangers as those pesky Bears came out on top in a VAR-dominated affair.
We'll then look ahead to our trip to Paisley as we take on high-flying St Mirren after the international break.
The Lions came up against a Rangers side under new management at the weekend. In a game dominated by VAR, the visitors would cruise to a 2-0 victory, making it 5 defeats on the bounce for the Lions. Ewan, I think you've got some things to say about the starting lineup to begin with, so I guess we'll kick it off there then.
We've spoke about it in previous weeks. For me, again, and listening to the manager's comments as well, again, the starting 11, if you look at the personnel in that starting 11, for me, Shamal George is in goals, Sean Kelly, Mikey Devlin, DeLucas is your back 3, Penrice would probably be the right-hand side, Montano left, Sangari, Shinnie, Pittman in front, and then obviously 2 up with Newbley and Anderson. And yet we find ourselves playing Christian Montano as a right centre-back. It was a trial playing him as a left centre-back a few weeks ago, but putting him on his wrong side as a left centre-back, and DeLucas as a right wing-back. As I say, listening to the manager's comments, he seemed pretty focused on a long diagonal Seema on Rangers' left-hand side. And again, it just, for me, just screamed of overthinking. And the manager said it himself, it gave us very little going out on their right-hand side because you've got Montano playing wrong side. He can't be maybe as direct as he normally would be. You've got DeLucas, who's naturally a centre-half, being your outlet out wide, not the most forward thinking of players. And again, it just screamed overthinking what the opposition are going to do and try what can we do to stop the opposition doing things rather than having a focus on how we could hurt Rangers. And as I say, just looking at that starting 11, you had the personnel to probably put guys in more natural positions. But again, it's kind of upset the balance of our own team trying to combat the opposition. For me, again, as I say, it's just screamed of overthinking.
It's just kind of strange to me how every kind of game in that there's just something that's been moved out of way. But right back as well. I think this is for me what kind of, and probably all our fans as well, for that kind of right wing back position, we've seen Jamie Brandon play there. And I think Jamie Brandon had was it one poor game against St Johnstone? Was it have been that he ended up getting taken off, and we've not really seen him featured since. Miles Welch-Hayes has came in last couple of games, and to be fair to him as well, he's done a pretty decent job. What's kind of happened there, though, that these guys aren't getting like a sniff? And I know playing against Rangers is a big deal and all that, but they're natural right-sided defenders. Both can play as, the full-back kind of wing-back. We've seen that already kind of this season. If not, you can put Welch-Hayes as that right centre-half, and then that encourages Montano to be the right wing-back, or you put Penrice on there as well. It's really bizarre in that kind of way where, yeah, it's always something very, very odd within the team. And it upsets the balance of it. And, I can only imagine what it kind of does for these players sitting on the bench as well, looking at it and being like, oh, I'm clearly not fancied because this player's getting played there instead of me, even though it's a complete, square peg in a round hole kind of thing. But it's a very odd one. Is there any kind of other aspects of the team that you were maybe shocked at to see? Perhaps the inclusion of Shamal George back in goals instead of Jack Hamilton after a couple of good displays from him. Does that back up the point again about performances maybe not meriting positions?
Yeah, and again, this isn't me going to town on the manager here, but he constantly talks about being in possession of the jersey, and I don't think Jack Hamilton's done anything wrong to lose his place in the side. For me, that just clearly shows that Davy sees Shamal George as his number one, outright number one, regardless. But for me, Jack had a very good performance at Tynecastle, arguably kept us in the game in the first half in particular. Was absolutely solid at Dens Park as well. He's beaten by an absolute worldie. Nothing he could really do with that. I wouldn't expect any goalkeeper to save that free kick. So yeah, I think it's a bit harsh to see Jack Hamilton come out the side based off of those two previous games. So that's another one you could sit and debate about, given what the manager's spoken about in the past with regards to players being in possession of the jersey.
Yeah, I guess kind of going into the game, that first half was wild is the only kind of way to kind of discuss about it with the amount of VAR decisions that kind of happened as well. The first kind of flashpoint of the game is essentially a free kick comes in. And in this instance here, Shamal George, I think, has to do so much better with this initial free kick to not even end up at this decision, in all honesty. The ball bounces in front of him, it just sort of hits off him. And then we get fortunate that the player who cuts it back to goaltender, there's somebody standing in front of Shamal who, deems to be called offside. In all honesty, I don't think I'd have any complaints if this kind of stood. It's one of those kind of offsides that we've seen in recent weeks that are kind of debated and stuff like that, isn't it? With like the interpretation. I think that's probably down to our poor defending more so than an advantage to them by anything else. But we're bailed out a little bit. But the first goal comes from us getting a throw in, I believe. Luigi De Lucas playing right wing back, throws it to Nubley, bounces off of him, and then suddenly Rangers are away. One pass into the back line. Sean Kelly can't catch up to. It was Dessers who started, right?
Yeah. Dessers, yeah.
And he's unfortunate with the block that it kind of takes it over Shamal. It just bounces over him and rolls into the back of the net. As well as that, they have a penalty, which there's a lot of talk about VAR recently, isn't there? And I've kind of given that first kind of one that was disallowed a bit of like leeway. Like if it stood up, it's probably one of those ones that I wouldn't be too massively kind of discontent about. However, this penalty that's given for a clear dive, and not only has the referee got it wrong, the linesman's also on that side hasn't seen it, and then it's been reported back to the VAR monitors and stuff like that back in whatever headquarters they are, and they've said that that's a penalty. Is an absolute shambles, and what is the point in us having this if that's going to be given?
See, my big debate with this penalty decision is Stephen McLean's the referee and he gives the decision. He can be forgiven for giving that in real time. Linesman as well can be forgiven for giving that in real time. Where VAR is meant to come in is when there's a clear and obvious error. That is clear and obvious error, as you'll see once you see it. Replays, slowed down. You can actually see McCausland lifting his feet before he's reached George. He's anticipating the contact. There isn't any contact. It's a clear dive. For two officials to be sitting watching that on repeat in a room to decide that that's a penalty is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing that they've managed to give that. Now, thankfully, the penalty is missed by Tavernier. He puts it wide in the end. So, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't come to anything. But if that penalty was given against Rangers, I'd bet you any amount of money, I'd bet you every single penny I own, Angus, that there would be a 30-page dossier sent to the SPFL and SFA wanting an inquiry about that decision. We should be kicking up such a fuss that decision's been given. It's an absolute joke. And as I say, I can forgive the referee, I can forgive the linesman. They've had one look at it. McCausland's travelling at pace. It's a split-second decision for them. It's the folks sitting in the VAR studio turning around and saying that's not a clear and obvious error is just, as I say, mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Aye, it's unbelievable. I can't believe looking at that. Like, you look at all the different angles in that as well, like from the highlights, and it's just genuinely unbelievable as to how that's been given. And yeah, as you're saying, if that's given against them, you can imagine the uproar about it. But yeah, nothing will continue to be done about it. And I think that's the thing that poses the question right now, Euan, is like, what's the point in us forking out all this money if they're not going to get decisions like that correct? Like, that is as clear as you can kind of go. But yeah, nothing kind of happens. We kind of get fortunate as well. I think this is quite like a strange one as well, where there's a second disallowed goal as well for VAR on the stroke of like half time as well. It seems to be that as DeLucas tugs on the shirt of one of the Rangers forwards, who then kind of bundles into Montano, that then gives a foul against the Rangers attacker to disallow that goal as well. Again, don't really see a massive amount of much in this. I think it's kind of 50-50 between them. It's like one of those ones for me, Euan, where I'm like, how can you only give that to one team? Like, it's either not a foul, like, well, it's just not a foul, or I guess whoever it happens to first is who kind of gets it. But yeah, it was just an awful day for the VAR monitors, wasn't it? I think that there's going to be a lot of questioning, and I think this game being on Sky and all of that, it just makes everything just look incredibly silly.
Our pitch is the bad advertisement. Remember that.
Yeah, it's not players diving or VAR getting it wrong and everything like that. It's all to do with that. But yeah, I guess we'll definitely say that we're very fortunate to go in only 1-0 at the break. I think not only due to the goals that were disallowed, rightfully or wrongfully, just in terms of the performance, to be fair. Not saying that we're necessarily very poor, but we just don't do anything anymore, Euan. It's the simplest way to put it. We keep on talking about the fact that we're wanting to tighten up defensively and stuff like that. What we're doing though is that we're sacrificing every single aspect of us being in the other team's half to the point where we're just defending constantly. And I think that's maybe something that's maybe causing us so many problems as well, is the fact that we're struggling defensively, but we're not helping ourselves out. The ball's just constantly coming back in. There's no out ball. There's no attempt to win it further up the park. There's no attempt to even counter-attack. There's not anybody like running off of players or anything like that. We just seem absolutely terrified of conceding goals. So we're just parking everybody behind the ball. And yeah, that's just offering them to come back into the game, isn't it? Like every time that we clear it.
Yeah, to kind of touch on the full first half, exactly what you're kind of saying. I didn't think it was difficult for Rangers to get out, when we were pressing higher up the pitch. And we left ourselves so exposed at times. It's playing quite a high line against Rangers. It was really easy for them to get out and in behind us. It was taking, a couple of passes and they were in behind, bearing in on goal. On a few occasions, just poor finishing, a couple of saves. There was a warning for us early doors. Dessers had a 1v1 with Shamal George, which he stood up to. Kind of talking on the Goldson disallowed goal. I'm in disagreement with you. I can understand why that's disallowed, and I think it's probably the right decision as well. The player who's initially gone for the cross before Shamal George parries it out, he's made a clear attempt to play the ball in an offside position. For me, that is the correct decision, albeit I do agree that I think Shamal should still do better in that situation regardless, and it shouldn't be coming down to VAR getting involved with it. But we've already discussed the penalty, and I'm still annoyed about it, even though he missed it. But Dessers has that goal, and again, it's a prime example of Rangers finding it really easy to play through us. Really poor touch from the throw-in by Joel Newbley. Tom Lawrence has found the ball, and it's one pass through the spine of our team, and Dessers is in on goal. Albeit I think Sean Kelly is desperately unlucky, as is Shamal George, and the fact that, as you say, that kind of block tackles ended up just lifting the ball over Shamal George and it trickles into the net. But yeah, the only kind of real opportunity, I kind of half chance we had was Bruce Anderson, when the ball's gone over the top and he's kind of had a snapshot on the half volley, but he's put it well, kind of high and wide in the end. And then there's the second disallowed goal from Rangers from McCausland, and it's one of those ones where the referee's actually given the foul. He's waited for the play to finish and then has pulled it back for the foul. Steve McLean's probably been quite smart in that he's waited for the play to finish, allowed the goal to happen, and so that VAR, it's basically a safety net there. Had the goal been given, I don't think you could argue it. I think it's 6 of 1, half a dozen in terms of the foul on, I believe it's a foul on Montano by Sima, but as you say, DeLucas is also holding Sima in this phase of play. So can you really give it one way or the other? It's a difficult one to kind of judge. But yeah, going second half, I think we defended better. I think we restricted Rangers a lot more, again, without really offering any sort of threat ourselves, other than a very much a half chance for Bruce Anderson, a header which he glances well wide in the end, kind of early doors in the second half. But I wouldn't have said Rangers were carving us open in the second 45 minutes, but they get the second penalty, which ultimately kills the game, and it's probably one of the decisions I'm not going to argue with. I think it is a handball, albeit in real time I was wondering who the handball was given against, but seeing it again, Devlin's got his arm above his head. In this day and age, that's for me a pretty clear cut and dry penalty. You can't defend crosses into your box with your arms up anymore. Even if you need them for leverage or anything like that, you're just going to get punished and it's going to be given as a penalty. And had that been in the opposition box, I would have been crying out for a penalty. So yeah, can't really argue with that one. And Tavernier dispatches of that penalty this time, send Shamal George the wrong way, and from then on it's just kind of just try to get to the end of the game and try and stay in it as much as possible. But I think there's elements where you can turn around and go, there was a form of improvement, but as you say, it's just the lack of, we don't seem to have that bite about us. At the start of the season, we were actually credited the team quite a bit with showing a bit of character in some games. The Aberdeen game showed a bit of grit, determination. The Hibs game showed a bit of character to bounce back after conceding that goal, scoring again. The Ross County St Johnstone games, not playing particularly well, but battling away. We just seem to be lacking that at this moment in time. We don't seem to have that bite about us, that aggressiveness in how we play without the ball. And because we're not aggressive without the ball, as you say, we're almost just inviting wave after wave after wave after wave in some games. And there's only so much you can do when you do that. If you're going to continuously invite pressure onto you like that, it's inevitable that you're going to concede goals eventually.
Yeah, I think perhaps we're picking the wrong game to kind of be singling this out, but this performance is similar to the one against against Hearts at Tynecastle, that home game against Dundee, where we're not doing anything and all of that, and then obviously when you're going to play Rangers and you try that, it's going to be even worse. It's just frustrating at this moment, and I can see why a lot of people are getting kind of a grief, because nobody wants to kind of see that with a team who's camped in their own half the entire time. And we're used to that though. We are used to being our backs up against the wall against the Old Firm and all of that. The manner though that we've been going about it in that is completely different though.
It's just very passive, isn't it?
Yeah,
very passive.
The way that we played before in these kind of home games against the Old Firm and stuff like that, and anybody who came to our home stadium, we would be at them. Anytime they were in their box, we'd be harassing them. Somebody would run out to them. Somebody else would back them up and everything like that. There was so much endeavour in that side that maybe helped make up for the lack of finances and stuff like that. You look at that midfield of Pittman, Jacobs, and Sean Byrne there. Maybe not the most technically gifted and stuff like that, but you can guarantee for 90 minutes that they would not give the team that they're playing against a minute's peace. And they were playing against some great midfields and some great players in that time as well. And the amount of joy that they got. Not saying that obviously we've not got good players in there right now, but we're doing nothing against them. We're not getting stuck in. We're not winning the ball back. We're not cutting them out. It's we're basically hoping that the shot bounces wide or the cross comes to the goalkeeper or something like that. And it's just hard to get behind at this moment, isn't it?
Yeah, you picked out one player there, Scott Pittman. Pitt started the game at the weekend there, and we were talking about it before we started recording, but there's one thing I can never question Scott Pittman on. It's his commitment and his endeavour when he's on the park. And for me, Pitts was still doing that. He was still going out to press. But as you say, there was nobody backing him up after that. Once they beat his press, Rangers had comfortable possession in the middle of the park. There was nobody, as I say, coming in and supporting Pittman as a second body to come and press the ball higher up the pitch and try and win the ball higher up the park. As you say, it's a difficult game to be really critical of the team because it is against Rangers, who are head and shoulders probably the second best team in the country behind Celtic, and came off the back of a fantastic European result against Sparta Prague in the week. And they have hit a vein of form under the new manager as well. So maybe we are being overly critical, but I think it's just the pattern of results and the pattern of performances that are kind of highlighting this. And one goal in open play in our last 9, Bruce Anderson's goal against Motherwell, kind of sums up that we're offering very, very little in the attacking third of the pitch, and not looking like that's going to be resolved anytime soon based on recent performances, other than Dundee to an extent. Yeah, it's very difficult to watch, and I just want to see us have a bit more of a go at teams. I know Davies talked about getting defensive bodies back after the international break, hoping to have Ayo back, Nottingham back, but I think we need to start focusing on how we hurt teams a little bit more rather than how we're stopping teams. As we touched on right at the start, let's stop putting square pegs round holes. Let's get players in natural positions. I was chatting about it during the week. A combination of Holt and Shinnie sitting in front of our back four, Bradley, Mackay, either side, Nubley one side, Stephen Kelly as a 10, Bruce Anderson as a 9. I think you've got players playing in natural positions and I feel that front four could cause most teams in this league problems on their day as well. So I just feel we need to start thinking about what we can do to put the onus on teams and put teams under pressure, rather than it being a constant, how do we stop them? What can we do to stop them? Let's put somebody here who can do a job for that 90 minutes. We need to start focusing on our strengths and what we can do to hurt teams a little bit more. Yeah. However, there was other news during the week, which was a new coach arriving at the Tony Macaroni Arena. I think this one caught a few folk off guard. Brian Rice. I think everyone in Scottish football knows who Brian Rice is. Chipper, his nickname. He's come in from Alloa, stepped aside as Alloa's manager. and he's coming in as a first team coach, I believe, until the end of the season. Angus, what was your initial thoughts on Chipper coming in?
Yeah, positive. I'm very encouraged by that. I think that after Berra kind of left last season, I think it would seem as if there was a bit of a hole in the coaching staff there where just essentially a position wasn't replaced, essentially. We had obviously the likes of like Dougie Imrie helping out before, Bartley obviously before as well. So I think having somebody come in is good, never mind somebody who's also had, prior experience. I think you look at that kind of the coaching setup here at the moment, it is relatively inexperienced for the most part. Obviously, Davey has been here for quite a while in that now, but still is learning on the job and stuff like that. And I think that somebody like Brian Rice does help in that kind of way. Obviously, he's been in the league before with Hamilton, knows the kind of the budgets that we're kind of working with in that as well. So, yeah, it's something that I'm encouraged by, and hopefully it's something that has like a positive reaction with the kind of squad, and we can hopefully see some things improving in the near future.
I was quite positive with regards to the decision to bring Brian Rice in, as you touched on. Previous coaches we've had in those sort of positions, being the likes of Dougie Imrie, Marvin Bartley, Christoph Berra, who are all kind of making that step from playing into coaching and management. Whilst Brian Rice has been there and done it as a number two, wealth of experience as a number two, working with Yogi Hughes, albeit Yogi's not a fan's favourite amongst a lot of Livingston fans, but he's got a wealth of experience in that department, and more recently he's kind of stepped out as a number one, as you mentioned, with Hamilton Accies, and by all accounts his stint at Alloa was fairly successful, certainly last year, albeit I think this year they've struggled a little bit more. But I think it's good that Davies getting somebody who does have that experience as a number two in with him, and what's a pretty sticky patch for us at this moment in time. I think it's good to get as I say, an experienced head, a seasoned campaigner in to assist Davy with that. And hopefully maybe that fresh voice in the dressing room can help as well. Fresh voice on the training pitch, fresh ideas coming in. And I believe Davy and Chipper get on really well. Might be wrong in saying this. I believe he did a little bit of scouting here or there to help Davy out when he was out at work. And they kind of, as you mentioned there, they've worked at similar-ish clubs. Hamilton Accies, very much similar to ourselves in terms of budget-wise, support-wise, size of club. And, I think it's a good match. And, I mean, what opposition dugout isn't going to be scared of the Mitchell brothers coming up against them? We had a very bald bench at the weekend there. A very bald bench.
That poor boy McCall, he's going to be looking across and he's going to be frightened for his life.
I mean, Big Phil he's big, isn't he? He was a big guy when you saw him in the flesh at the weekend there. But yeah, that's a bruising dugout that we've got now with Davy, Chipper, Neil Hastings and Big Gary Malley in there as well as the bouncer. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be an entertaining bench between now and the end of the season as well. But welcome to the football club, Brian Rice. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Strana for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Lions make the trip to Paisley after the international break to take on a St Mirren side flying high in the Premiership this campaign. I guess given the run of form we're on, it's another pretty tough test, albeit St Mirren didn't have the best of results at the weekend there, losing 4-0 up at Dens Park. But as we kind of talked about, they're a team on a high at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I think St Mirren's always been a tough place for us to go since kind of coming up. I think we've only won maybe a handful of times there. And then in recent seasons, the record against them, I think the best that we've had has been draws. I think of what the last time we beat them was it when Dykes was there?
Yeah, our last victory against St Mirren was the League Cup semi-final, but our last victory in the league was just before COVID, where I think a Stephen Lawless penalty in London Dykes early second half, 2-1 victory midweek against them. So yeah,
So
going
that
back
shows
to
you of the kind of form that we've had against them as it is. Never mind the fact that they're, actually quite decent now as well. I think the only shining light that's come out of last weekend, well, the weekend's results there is that they've been turned over 4-0. Who knows if that's maybe going to be a shock to the system and something that could maybe be a wee bit of the beginning of like a dip in form for them. I think we've seen that with a couple of teams over the years. I think Motherwell's maybe the biggest example of that, where they've been flying high, doing so well, and it takes only kind of one kind of shock to the system to kind of derail things and kind of look at them there. So hopefully that's going to be the kind of case for us, and they're not firing in all cylinders. I don't think that whenever we play them in that though, Euan, that we're ever really properly massively outdone by them. Probably apart from that last one, that one last season when it was 3-0. I think every game's usually kind of competitive and stuff like that. My biggest concern for this is that we're not being competitive right now, and if that's going to happen, then they've got the quality that will punish us for that. So we've got to be right at it. If we go and play with men just sitting behind the ball, yeah, we'll lose the game because they'll be a team high on confidence in that, and they've got players who are in good kind of form who will be able to take advantage of that. But hopefully that there is some rejigging to our side made. But whether or not we're confident of that happening, is yet to be seen.
Yeah, going into the game, looking at St Mirren's track record this season, it's 5 wins, 4 draws, 3 defeats. Their defeats coming at the hand of either side of the Old Firm and the game at the weekend there against Dundee. So they're a team, as I say, they're banging form for the most part of this season, flying high, kind of carrying on that crest of a wave of getting into the top 6 last year. And Stephen Robinson's just doing what Stephen Robinson does. He has a very well organised side, very difficult to break down, don't concede a great deal of goals, and they're always capable of nicking goals both home and away. And scored 18 this season, conceded 18, albeit that kind of 4-0 defeat kind of puts a dampener on their defensive record for the campaign so far. But yeah, they're a side, and as you say, in previous games against them, other than that kind of outlying result of that 3-0, other than that, the games are always very tight, very closely contested, and the game earlier in the season is a prime example of that. We scored late on, probably should have come away with 3 points and ended that St Mirren hoodoo, but again, St Mirren just have a knack. They're able to nick something, and they managed to get that equaliser really late on. I think it was 95, 96 minutes on the clock when they got that equaliser at our place. But yeah, a couple of players that we'll need to be very wary of. Mikel Manderon's got 3 goals this season, 1 assist. I think he's proved to be a bit of a surprise package, given his 6-month stint at Motherwell didn't come to an awful lot last year. Greg Kelty, player I really like, he scored a couple of goals, 3 assists as well this season. So he's been a decent creative force for them. But looking at St Mirren on the whole, typically tend to play with a back 3. I think very similar to how we've set up this season, almost a 3-4-3. We're kind of 2 in behind a Mandaron up top. Looking at the St Mirren side, are there players that you're particularly wary of? I'm a big fan of the boy Ryan Strain. I'm surprised bigger clubs haven't had a look at him at right wing back. Kiana Bacchus is kind of gets stuck in the middle of the park. Mark O'Hara as well, kind of very combative midfielder, but chips in with the odd goal here or there. Any other players that you would be wary of for St Mirren?
I'm a big fan of that midfield, to be fair. I think that's an instance there where we're kind of talking about in the Rangers game that we're not going to be pressing and we're not going to be combative in the middle of the park. That those are players who could definitely hurt us. The way that they're kind of wide players as well. You've got Strain, also Scott Tanzer as well. The crosses that they can deliver into our box. You've seen how poorly we've dealt with, set pieces and all of that. we've probably got maybe, arguably outside of Rangers, we've probably got the team with the best fullbacks based off of crossing ability, in the league, who are going to be, swinging balls in that. It's going to be interesting to see how we cope with those kind of things as well. So yeah, it's the way they're talking about this year, and it doesn't seem to be going overly positive. But we kind of touched on on our own team, regarding the kind of the Rangers game there. Do you see us having a little bit more of a go here? Would that be something you're expecting to see? Maybe a change in formation, or are you wanting to see more of the back five to kind of combat them?
Yeah, in recent seasons when we go to St Mirren, we seem to always try and match them up. And again, it's that kind of focus on what they do. And quite more often than not, it kind of results in a very nothing game with not a lot to pick between the sides. But I'd like to see us try and be positive and on the front foot. I know they've had a very good start to the season, kind of carried on from a very good campaign last year. This isn't a disrespect to St Mirren, but they're not world beaters all of a sudden. It's not that you can't go there and get results. I think we've got players that could cause them problems. And I feel we need to try and focus on what we can do to hurt St Mirren. Kind of carrying on from what we were talking about in the Rangers game. Does that marry up with kind of a changing system? Sit with a back four, try and play kind of centre midfield three, or a kind of two sitting with three in behind Bruce Anderson. That's the way I would possibly look at it, especially if you haven't got the likes of Oberlai back, you haven't got the likes of Nottingham back, you've not got those options to play that back three. And as we've talked about, almost putting square pegs in round holes just to try and keep playing with a particular system. So if you've not got the personnel available to do it and you'd be comfortable playing it, I think we maybe need to tweak our shape and, as I say, try and focus on how we can hurt St Mirren, because, as I say, they're a decent side, they're well organised, but let's put them under a bit of pressure. Folks from Paisley are angry people. It doesn't take a lot for them to turn on the team. They're a very angry bunch over in Paisley. I know that. I work at the stadium. But let's try and be on the front foot, and let's try and put a bit of pressure on St Mirren. Take advantage of the fact they've just lost the game 4-0. Put them under a bit early pressure. As I say, try and put them on the back foot. And for me, we also need to try and play with a little bit of pace in the forward areas, which kind of screams Dan Mackay kind of being in there, or a Stephen Bradley or Bruce Anderson. Kind of let's try and stretch the game a little bit. And as I say, I think that's maybe a slight weakness in St Mirren's game, is I don't think they have a massive amount of pace in their side. So let's try and put a bit of pace on the park that can try and stretch the game a little bit.
Or we could try punting the ball up to Bruce Anderson, who's going to be up against Gogic, Fraser, whoever else.
Taylor has been their back three recently.
Yeah. Are you sure? Are you sure that that's not the way to go forward?
Some may argue. Some may argue, but as you say, let's try and play to our strengths a little bit and get players who can run with the ball, carry the ball, take players on. As I say, I don't think St Mirren are the quickest team. So trying to play players that have got that little bit of pace, who can travel with the ball and commit players, I think would be a way that we can cause them a few problems.
Well, I guess we'll go for a wee prediction then, Euan. What are you expecting?
I'm going to be negative again, because in recent performances I've just not seen anything in an attacking sense to think that we're going there and scoring a goal. 2-0 St Mirren.
So I was going to say the exact same. We're not going to score, are we? Because we're not going to. I don't see us changing up the way that we're playing. If we do, I guess I'll do that as my wee bit of optimism, and I'll go for 2-1 to St Mirren.
your bit of optimism is a slightly narrower defeat.
Yeah. Can't believe I've picked us to score a goal away from home as well. But
I know I said that to you at Tynecastle, didn't I, after about 70 minutes where we hadn't crossed the halfway line and went, it was really cute that you thought we'd score. But Yeah, here's hoping we are severely wrong and we can get out of this little rut and get our season started again.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. We really appreciate you tuning in every week and we'd love to hear your feedback. You can leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, so simply search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there, and any shares and likes are always appreciated as well. All our episodes are available on all the usual podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify, and we're also on YouTube, and we'd love you to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we have done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. We'll be back in, probably 2 weeks' time following that St Mirren game. Thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. And let's hope for, a better week once we return following the Lothian's finest football team.
But in the meantime, get yourselves down to watch our women's side over the international break, who are home to St Johnstone. Am I right in saying that, Angus?
Home at St Johnstone, indeed, on Sunday.
Yeah, and you can still obviously catch the Scotland game as we bring our successful qualifying campaign to an end against Norway at Hampden and can celebrate going to the Euros next summer. But yeah, thanks for tuning in as always.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Ambervale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, to the